another angle in my bedroom, or not a bedroom, in my knitting room. This room may be small, but it contains multitudes. Hi guys, I figured I would make another video for you guys for this month. I have been very heavily influenced by the world of BookTube, which is YouTube focused on, reading and reviewing books, and I figured, in the past 6 months, I've been reading a lot. And I started reading a lot when I started working at a library, which, it was bound to happen. People would always ask me, oh, you're an English major? You must read a lot. Or, oh, you're going in for, library science? You must read a lot. And I really didn't, because my life was just so jam-packed and busy. But now I'm really rediscovering my love for reading, the love that I used to have when I was in middle school and high school. And I am just happy to really be getting back into it, and just to be getting back into it, and just to, find that love for literary fiction, especially, again. So I figured I would talk to you about, what I've been reading. I was going to do a video where I talk about the books that I've read in the past 6 months, but that was going to end up being a really long video. And I figured I would just talk to you about the books that I've read in January and February. I would like to make this a monthly video, or a monthly thing that I do to go over the books that I've been reading month to month. And I figured I would start with this. I wrote up a whole script, so if I'm looking down, it's just because I compiled my thoughts in a nicer fashion. It was like I was back in college again, writing basically a 6-page paper on the books that I read this year, or these past 2 months. So here is my stack so far. You can kind of see some empty holes in my bookshelf right now where they belong. So here is the stack, and let's get into what I read this this past winter so far. Alright, so since I said that, I am just, heavily influenced by BookTube, the first book that I'm talking about makes sense. This is Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Sally Rooney, and oh my goodness, I was just absolutely enthralled with this story. It is probably her best work of fiction yet, in my opinion, probably because conversation with friends and normal people, I felt a little bit too far removed from it, because I am a little bit older, believe it or not. I am 27, and this follows the lives of some people in their older 20s, which I greatly appreciate. But yeah, I'm just obsessed with this book. I am just enthralled, and like I said, in love with it. So a little bit of a synopsis. Our Beautiful World, Where Are You follows the interconnecting lives of friends Alice, Eileen, Felix, and Simon, who are all in their late 20s or 30s, and 30s, and they're trying to navigate life and love and long distance relationships, and what their purpose is in the world, and what a beautiful life looks like. I related so much to these characters because their struggles were my struggles. As kind of sad as that is, I definitely related so much to these people. I felt very seen. Speaking of being seen, oh my goodness. Can I please? I felt very seen while reading this book. I love reading realistic stories about people who have real life struggles, and there's real life consequences to their actions, and I love stories of miscommunication and learning to communicate with others. That's a really big theme in all of Sally Rooney's books, but this one especially is really touches on that theme. And I also felt really seen because I found it, or at least in the past, I find it really hard to find really good works of fiction about people in their late 20s. A lot of stuff, especially on BookTube, seems to be focused on people either teenagers or in their early 20s, in college, trying to figure themselves out. But I love this was a story about people their late 20s. They're already out of college, they're in careers, like they're deep into their careers, trying to figure everything out, determine whether or not it was worth it going to college, trying to find love, in the current state of the world that we're in. It was great to read a story about people in their 20s who don't already have children and are just trying to navigate their way through life and just to find worth in themselves, both inside and outside of relationships. It was just a perfect novel, and I'm still recovering from it. I just love it so much. Actually, recently I was at my work at the library, and someone came up to the desk and said, "Do you guys have Beautiful World, Where Are You?" by Sally Rooney. I was like, unfortunately we don't. And of course, everyone's trying to read this, and I'm like, you're just better off just buying it, and it's so worth it. And I was like, it was a young guy too, so I was like, trying to really help him. We don't have it, but we have conversations with friends. He's like, oh, I just read Normal People. I'm like, I'm gonna find you conversations with friends for you. You're gonna fall in love. I'm not gonna keep you away from Sally Rooney for very long. But yeah, so that was that was my little interaction. Here's a quote from the book that I feel very much express or summarizes basically what you're gonna get when reading them. Maybe we're not just born to love to worry about the people we know and go on loving and worrying even more when there are more important things that we should be doing. And even if that means the human species is going to die out, isn't it a very nice way to die out? The nicest reason you can imagine. Because when we see that we've been reorganizing the distribution of the world's resources and transitioning collectively to a sustainable economic model, we were worrying about sex and friendship instead. Because we loved each other so much and found each other too interesting. And I love that about humanity, in the fact that it's the very reason I root for us to survive, because we are all so stupid about each other. So I would absolutely give Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? 5 out of 5 stars. So the second book I read this year was a book that was actually recommended to me by my sister. She recommended this work of fiction to me because she was so taken aback by it. She found the story very intriguing. She just found it so interesting. She's like, "Caitlin, you gotta read it." I'm like, okay. And it was We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. And I don't have the book with me right now, but here you go. It's a bit of an older work of young adult fiction. And I definitely recognize E. Lockhart. I remember seeing her books in the young adult section of my library and in the young adult section at Barnes & Noble. And I was never really drawn to E. Lockhart's books. I just wasn't for it personally. I was definitely more drawn towards people like David Levithan and John Green and Ned Vizzini. Those were the type of works of fiction I read when I was, in high school and middle school. But I knew a lot of girls who read E. Lockhart. But this is We Were Liars, and like I said, my sister could not put this book down. She loved it. She's like, "You need to read this immediately. I'm telling everyone to read it," and they read it in a day. It's fantastic. And I just feel like maybe I'm past the young adult fiction sort of thing, the melodrama of it all. I mean, I will forever buy all of John Green's books, as you can kind of see. John Green is my king of young adult fiction, and I will never not read his books. That's probably the only young adult I'll ever read for the rest of my life. But there was just something about... I'm just so over young adult fiction, honestly. I'm just I just can't get into it anymore. So I mean, I gave this book a college try, and I did finish it, and here are my thoughts about it. We Are Liars follows the story of Cadence Sinclair and her very prestigious family. They live off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Cadence spends her summers there off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, living with her aunts and her grandfather, and she falls in love with a family friend who comes to stay with them every summer. But during the summer of her 15th year, Cadence, there was an accident that leaves Cadence with partial amnesia when she suffers from migraines. And during her first summer back, no one wants to tell Cadence what happened during that summer. She doesn't remember what exactly happened. She doesn't know what the accident was. All she knows is that she doesn't remember that summer. So eventually, as the book goes on, Cadence discovers the truth, but would she be able to handle it? I can see why my sister really loved this story. There's a mystery involved. There's a little bit of romance. A lot of forbidden love, old money drama. Like, it's very interesting. And at first, I found it very interesting. But the more I read it, the less interested I became in the story, and the more I realized this is just dragging on, and this is just melodrama with like nothing really happening. I looked up on Goodreads and someone made a comment, that the cousins call themselves the liars, but they don't do anything. Like, they don't, Cadence and her cousins, they're like a team, and this group of pals, and they have a name for themselves, for their little gang, and they call themselves the liars. But they don't do anything except sit around, watch TV, and talk about their boyfriends back at home. Like, nothing really happens. I couldn't personally relate to. And the writing style was just awful. Like I said, it was melodramatic. It was super theatrical for no reason, trying to add in suspense and drama where there didn't need to be, and trying to make the girl sound like she's some sort of poet and a broken soul and everything, but she's just this rich girl who likes to read poetry every once in a while. I finished it, and there's also a twist at the end, which I saw coming from a mile away, honestly, and when I brought it to my sister, she was like, what do you mean? I could not. I just realized as this clip has been sitting here this whole video. I used to do yoga in here, and I would put this in here to keep my hair up. Jeez, Caitlin, get yourself together. I get why people like it, but I would not recommend it, unfortunately. Here is a quote from the book that I took down. They know that tragedy is not glamorous. They know that it doesn't play out in life as it does on a stage or between the pages of a book. It's not a punishment nor a lesson. Its horrors are not attributed to one single person. Tragedy is ugly and tangled, stupid and confusing. I give We Were Liars 2 stars. So while I was on vacation in Florida with my family, amidst some quite exciting times, I should say, I was actually very much underwhelmed by Exciting Times by Nisha Dolan. You would think that a book with the title Exciting Times would have been a bit more exciting, but perhaps that was the point. Exciting Times follows the life of Ava. She has recently graduated from college in Ireland, and she is now teaching English to rich kids in Hong Kong. While she's in Hong Kong, she meets Julian, a English banker who is, I guess, stationed out in Hong Kong, and Ava quickly falls in love with Julian, but Julian does not reciprocate the same feelings. However, he does enjoy, buying her things when she needs it, letting her live in his apartment, his very extravagant apartment, and having physical relations with her, but does not want to commit to an actual relationship. And because Ava has low self-worth, she just lets it happen. Eventually, a couple months into their relationship, Julian has to return back to England and gets, for an undetermined amount of time, and Julian lets Ava live in his apartment while he's away. Shortly after Julian leaves, Ava meets and starts to fall for Edith, lawyer in Hong Kong who also lives an extravagant and wealthy life, something that Ava finds very appealing, obviously, as she grew up from not so wealthy means in Ireland, so she finds the idea of money very appealing. During, her fling with Ava, she's struggling with feelings for Julian and trying to determine who she wants to continue a relationship with, and it goes on from there. I won't go any further because, you guys are supposed to read the book too. I was not a fan of Ava as a character. I did not like her at all, because Ava, claims to be a feminist and tries to speak very highly of women, and comes off as this very intellectual person who can keep up a conversation with anyone, no matter, like, especially, the richer class. And talks about how, money isn't everything, and, like, blah, blah, blah. But yet she finds herself drawn to these rich people because they take care of her. And I really don't like that. I find that really shallow. And I found this protagonist very, like, not appealing. Like, I did not like the protagonist at all, and I think that Dolan did a great job writing a protagonist that you love to hate, basically. Ava's character even talks about how she lacks warmth and how she finds that to be an asset, and as someone who I think is a warm person, I just find people who lack warmth to be hard to engage with. So maybe I don't know. Like, she was just very arrogant and shallow, and the whole world is against her, and I guess, like, we were all like that in our early 20s. Like, I don't know, like, when I read this, like, I just, like, didn't find it appealing at all, and I didn't side with her, like, during her struggles. Like, I didn't, like, feel for her as she was trying to determine whether or not she was gonna go, or gonna continue this, like weird relationship with Julian, or go with Edith, who seemed to actually like her for who she is. Like, I just wanted Ava to go back home to Ireland and, like, leave these poor people alone, because she's obviously taking advantage of them. While I was reading this book, like, when like, someone, like, maybe your coworker or something, you come into work, you're both putting your food in the fridge at work or whatever, and your coworker says, like, oh, I had a dream last night. Do you want to hear about my dream? That's how I felt about reading this book. I felt like someone was telling me about their dream, and I just did not care what was going on. What agitates me a little bit was that this book was heavily marketed as being like Sally Rooney, like very Sally Rooney-esque, and it is not, because Sally Rooney writes likable characters, even though, like, Sally Rooney's characters have flaws. Like Ava has many flaws. Sally Rooney's characters are still relatable, and you still love them despite their flaws. This, I just couldn't with the protagonist. While I did, overall enjoy Nisha Dolan's writing style, and I look forward to whatever she puts out next. I just wasn't a fan of the story, but perhaps that is the point. And here's an excerpt from the book that I feel like really encompasses Ava as a character and the book as a whole. The truth is that you like Julian because he enables this perception you have of yourself as a detached person. Plenty of people are willing to offer you intimacy, and that terrifies you. You prefer feeling like no one will ever love you. Perhaps many of us felt that way in our 20s, but I feel like that really wraps up Ava as a character. So I give Exciting Times 3 stars. I look forward to what Nisha has to write in the future, but just wasn't a fan of Ava's story personally. Alright, for these next 2 books, I really hopped on the bandwagon, but I am so happy that I did. A few books have carried me away, like Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell has, and it sucked me in and broke me in a way that I never thought a book could. Hamnet tells a story about William Shakespeare's family. However, the bard is never mentioned by name. He's known as the father, or the husband, or the Latin tutor, or the playwright. He's never mentioned by name, which I found incredibly fascinating. So while it focuses on Shakespeare's family, Shakespeare is kind of more of a side character. We focus more on Anne, or Agnes, who is Anne Hathaway, as many of us Shakespeare enthusiasts know her as, but Agnes, Shakespeare's wife, and their son Hamnet, who actually, in real life, died of the plague at a very young age. And so Agnes is a woman with extraordinary gifts that tend to frighten people away, but the Latin tutor, Shakespeare, instantly falls in love with her and marries her despite these circumstances. The two have 3 children together, And the playwright splits his time, though unevenly, between his home in the English countryside and in London, where he is writing, producing, and directing these plays. Without any real warning, his son Hamnet dies from the plague, leaving the family absolutely gutted, and this drives a wedge between Agnes and her husband, as both have two very different reactions to the death of their son. Initially, I was turned off by the writing style. It is very dense. Compared to the past couple of books that I read, it is very dense, very descriptive, but it is absolutely filled with life. Like, there is no wasted words on any page. Like, they're all there for a reason. Like, it's not like, you know, when I think of over descriptions, I normally think of Tolkien. If any of you have read any of J.R. Tolkien's works of fiction, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How it takes, 3 pages to describe a blade of grass. But this, like I said, there was no words wasted on any of these pages. I was just, moved by everyone, by every character, even the ones you're supposed to hate. Like, they were all written so beautifully. Every setting, every character is beautifully written, which just makes the story so much more heartbreaking as it goes on. I loved to see Shakespeare depicted in the way that he was, from the perspective of his wife, because many of us don't really think of that. Like, when we think of Shakespeare, we think of this, lofty person who wrote all these, incredible, plays, but we don't think of him as like a regular person, and like to see that through the eyes of his wife was like pretty fascinating. But of course, he's not the focus of the novel, so I won't go on any longer about him. So this is a little bit of a spoiler warning, but I just need to talk about it because it just, gutted me so much. The final scene where Agnes goes to confront her husband about, the tragedy of the loss of their son, was just so upsetting for me to read. Like, for her to go and to see that they're putting on the production of Hamlet, which the name is so close to their actual son, and she comes out when Hamlet is confronting, or the ghost of Hamlet's father is confronting him. Agnes realizes that her husband has taken the grief that he has for his son and monetized it, basically, and she is absolutely heartbroken. She's like, I will never speak to him again. Like, this is, he has betrayed me and our family. And she turns around as she's leaving. She turns around to see the actor playing, the ghost of Hamlet's father, and he points into the audience and says, "Remember me," and it just, chills down my spine. Absolute chills. I was just so moved. I was at work when I read that final page, and I was just so on the edge of tears. It was so beautiful. Like, what a way to end a perfect work of historical fiction, honestly. And I'll read from you a quote from the book. Whatever is given may be taken away at any time. Cruelty and devastation wait for you around the corner, inside coffers, behind doors. They can leap out at you at any time, like a thief or brigand. The trick is never to let down your guard. Never think you are safe. Never take for granted that your children's hearts beat, that they suck milk, that they draw breath, that they walk and they speak and they smile and argue and play. Never for a moment forget that they may be gone, snatched from you in the blink of an eye, borne away from you like a thistledown. I'd give Hamnet 5 out of 5 stars. Like, no questions asked. Another banger of a book to follow the perfection that was Hamnet is Song of Achilles. This was one of those books where I was not really convinced that this was a fantastic book until I was about a fourth of the way through, and then I was absolutely hooked. Never did I think that I would become so engrossed with essentially Greek mythology fan fiction. I know those are crude words to use to describe this book, but it's basically that. I don't know how else to describe it. Song of Achilles is a retelling of the epic of Achilles, the greatest Greek who ever lived, told from the perspective of Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion and the love of his life. We see Achilles grow into the man that he is destined to become. The primary themes of this novel are fame, legacy, and power, and how one's hubris can get in the way of being a decent human being. My husband knows a lot about Greek mythology, so when I would talk to him about this book, he would basically say, oh yeah, that checks out. He also would correct me often when I would try to pronounce the characters' names. Like I would pronounce Patroclus as Patroclus, because I just, Greek names, like I just have such a hard time. Speaking of that, I want to do a little story time. For about 5 years, I taught English literature to homeschool kids. So for those of you who don't know, I was homeschooled from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I attended a homeschool co-op, and a co-op is where, these homeschool kids can go and, take classes, like fill in the gaps where their mothers or their parents, might not have the ability to teach them, like, I don't know, chemistry. So they would go and, have someone who has the ability and the knowledge to teach chemistry where like maybe someone else couldn't. Or a couple years after I graduated, they were in need of a literature teacher for high school English, so I decided to step up. I was supposed to be teaching world literature 1 year, and I was trying to get like the high schoolers like a well-rounded selection of world literature that they could read, so I chose the play Antigone. So I had never read the play before, but I figured that like it's a short play, like, it's not like super intimidating, it's not like the Iliad, like it should be fine. So I'm going to teach the class, and I'm talking about, Antigone, and Antigone this, and Antigone that, and here's what, here are the themes of Antigone, and, going on. I'm saying Antigone. And I say, okay, does anyone have any questions before we move forward? And one of like the quiet girls like raises her hand. Yes, like Miss Caitlin. Isn't it pronounced Antigone? And I was rendered absolutely speechless, and I literally walked out of the classroom from shame. I was so embarrassed. But anyways, so that was my story. Now I know never to try to pronounce Greek names without like double checking the pronunciation like a million times beforehand. So I am absolutely convinced that Greek retellings of Greek mythology are superior, and I am so excited to read other retellings of Greek mythology like Circe and Ariadne. Am I even saying those correctly? I don't know, but those two are on my Amazon wish list. I am definitely going to be reading those in the near future. Madeline Miller's writing style is so engaging, and she even makes the most unlikable characters, like Achilles, somewhat likable. The way that these well-known characters have been rehashed into characters that are so new yet familiar is just like astonishing to me that she can do that. You do not have to have any familiarity with Greek mythology to love this one. It's gripping, fast-paced, emotional, and absolutely enthralling. And I will read you a quote while I'm here. Odysseus inclined his head. True, but fame is a strange thing. Some men gain glory after they die, while others fade. What is admired in one's generation is abhorred by another. He spread his broad hands. We cannot say who will survive this holocaust of memory. Who knows, he smiled. Perhaps one day I will be more famous. Perhaps more famous than you. So I give Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller 4.5 stars. Sorry for the lighting change, guys. I got a call and then it got dark. So now we got artificial light instead of sunshine. But I only have 2 more books to talk about, and then it'll be good. Then we'll be done. So the next book I want to talk about is actually quite different from everything else. It is a classic French play, and that is Cyrano De Bergeac, and this is a copy from the library that I work at. There it is, the spine, Cyrano De Bergeac. This was a very quick read. I read it in an afternoon, or in an evening, I should say. I literally checked it out at the library and read it during my shift, and it was a quick read. Like, you can see how little text there is on the because it's a play, it goes by very quickly. Cyrano De Bergeac is a tale as old as time. Man falls in love with a woman falls in love with another man. The other man asks the first man for help in his relationship with this woman, to help him woo the woman. The woman then thinks she's in love with the other man when she's actually in love with the first man. It's a comedy of errors, basically. Every Disney Channel show had a premise like this for at least one episode, if those of you remember that. Cyrano is a headstrong man who is very boisterous and outspoken among his peers. He's very comfortable with himself except for one glaring thing, and that is his nose. In his words, it is gargantuan, and this is this makes him a laughingstock among men and women. And one of those women being his cousin, his cousin Roxanne. Cyrano is in love with Roxanne, but Roxanne is in love with a military man named Christian, and Christian seeks out Cyrano's help to help him woo Roxanne. Cyrano offers to help Christian to woo Roxanne by speaking for him, and for writing letters and having Christian sign his name. I will say the only reason I picked up this book was because I'm interested in the adaptation with Peter Dinklage that's coming out this year. It's made by the same people who made the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, and you know it's going to be good if it's made by those people. So I figured I would read the play to see what it was about before I eventually saw the movie, and I thought it was fine. It was entertaining. It was very fast-paced, very witty, very funny. The humor is there. It is translated from French to English, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cute story, though it was very predictable. But because again, I've heard this story a million times, but it was very cute. And I did totally skip some unneeded scenes for people who didn't matter, but that's 19th century fiction for you. There's gonna be a lot of nonsense. Like I said, I did find it very, very entertaining, and though it wasn't really anything sensational, it was, like I said, it kept my attention for an evening. So here's an example of the writing style. I have a different idea of elegance. I don't dress up like a fop, it is true, but my moral grooming is impeccable. I never appear in public with a soiled conscience, a tarnished honor, threadbare scruples, or an insult that I haven't washed away. I am immaculately clean, adore with independence and frankness. I may not cut a stylish figure, but I hold my soul erect and wear my deeds as ribbons. My wit is sharper than the finest mustache. And when I walk among men, I make truth rings like spurs. So I give Cyrano de Bergeac 3.5 stars. So I did have the intention of reading one more book, but I got halfway through it and I couldn't tell you what was happening. I tried so hard with this book and I just could not get into it, but I gave it the old college try, and that is The Blood of the Lamb by Peter de Vries. And I bought this is actually a reread for me, or an attempted reread. Yeah, I couldn't tell you what happened in this entire book. I just kept reading and was okay, the more I read, the more it's gonna make sense. But it didn't. It made zero sense to me. And this is, again, Blood of the Lamb. I read this book because I used to watch John Green's YouTube channel, and he would do book recommendations from time to time, and he recommended this one. And I was like, well, I'm gonna read what John Green says to read, because obviously the man is flawless, and everything he does is amazing, and he is my young adult king. So my young adult fiction king. So I'm gonna do what the king tells me to do. But this was a fail, John. I did not find this entertaining at all. And it sucks because I went on Goodreads to see what was going on with this book, and everyone loves it. They give it 4 or 5 stars. They say it's a beautiful story, and I'm I don't know what's happening. I can't even tell you the name of the protagonist. I don't know what's happening here. It's the DNF sorry, I'm gonna send this to my local thrift store. Hopefully someone else will like it, though I did not. So that is a big fail for me. That is it. That is all I read in the past 2 months, and I'm very happy with my list. That is what is it? That was 6 books. 6 books that I read, and like I said, I'm very happy with my list. I recommend all of them except for the ones that I don't recommend. I guess the only one I don't recommend is We Were Liars. I felt like it was a waste of time personally, but if you like that stuff, go ahead. I just was not a fan. But again, here's my fun little thumbnail picture. So yeah, that is all I have to share for you for January and February, and I look forward to making another video for March. And I think I'm gonna call these monthly reads with your favorite librarian or something like that, trying to be silly about it, because though I do not technically have the title of librarian at the institution that I work at, I do have a $50,000 piece of paper sitting above me that tells me otherwise. I am a librarian. Dang it, I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what my institution says. I'm a librarian. So cool. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this is something that you guys would turn into or tune into every month. I feel like this is something that I'm really going to enjoy doing. Talking about what I'm reading. I know it's not, it has nothing to do with knitting or the original intention of this channel, but I'm just happy to see, or I'm just, trying to do other things and to see, where it takes me. So I guess this is your favorite librarian signing off, and just to remember that reading gives us a place to go when we have to stay where we are. So keep that in mind when you pick up the next book to read. So stay safe, everyone. Keep reading, and I will see you all later.